Yeah,
it's
for
funny.
sure.
And then another band, which not only me, but a lot of people slept on, which is probably the biggest travesty in the history of rock music. You have any idea who I might be talking about? A band that influenced a lot of the bands that we listened to that didn't
Like,
even reach close to the success that all
what
the bands
era are
that
we
followed.
talking?
We're talking, well, they've actually been around. They predated the 90s, but they
Okay.
influenced all of the grunge and the heavy bands of the 90s. All of them claimed this band to be an influence, but they never reached the pinnacle of success that these other bands did.
I don't know.
King's X.
Oh yeah, yeah. A Texas band. King's X is. I've
Say.
seen Doug Pinnick more times than I can count in downtown Austin. Hey everybody out in YouTube land, my name is Mike and I love guitars, and this is another episode of the We Love Guitars podcast, and today I have the one and only Dan the Lonely Rocker as my guest. Welcome very much. I very much appreciate you joining me.
Well, I very much appreciate that you love guitars, and I'm happy to hang out with anyone who does.
It's I was telling you, I came across your channel several years ago. Like the first time I stumbled across it, I was looking on YouTube for like instructional stuff on building audio panels.
Of course,
Audio panels I still haven't actually made, by the way. But I came for the audio panels, but then I saw some of your videos and I saw that you also are a defender of the JCM 900, and so I had to keep watching your videos when I found out that you're a JCM 900 guy.
So I wonder if you predate my niche down to guitars, because when I started the channel, I was called I Don't Have a Band was the name of my channel. It was Tools for the Lonely Rocker, and I was doing home studio content. And about a year or less than a year, I was barely 1,000 subscribers, and I was trying to get a website for my channel. And I don't have a band.com was parked. Some guy just had it and was doing nothing with it.
Yeah.
And I was trying to come up with all kinds of different iterations of that, ID, HA, whatever that, HAB.
Yeah.
Nothing looked good. And I was just looking at my screen, and I come from the television broadcast world, so I'm always telling stories with titles and subtitles, or secondary titles. And I had this little thing that just came out of nowhere, Tools for the Lonely Rocker.
Yeah.
And then I looked at Lonely Rocker, and I go, hold on a second. I think I like that better. So I went and I found the .com. It was available. And then within seconds, I secured it. And then I sketched that little stick figure guy with headphones with his arms as guitars, literally like within an hour. And I just changed the name of my channel. I mean, nobody cares, only 1,000. But the funny thing is, the panels is from that older era of home studio content.
Yes. Now that you mention it, I remember that tagline. So, and I don't remember if, I mean, the video may have already been a year or two old by the time I found it, but that is how I first came across your channel. And like I said, I came for the acoustic panels. I stayed for the JCM 900 love, and been watching ever since. And I appreciate your style, and I like the fact that you are always very positive. I feel like we have an abundance of negativity in the community, and I like to keep things positive and happy. I'm a really laid back, easygoing guy, and I just don't have a need for all the negativity.
Well, I mean, I've evaluated and reevaluated my persona, because I'll tell everyone I'm nobody. I'm just a dude who loves guitar, right? And I worked in the TV industry as a producer, editor, that kind of stuff. So I had a bit of ability and a little bit of gear to get started.
Yeah.
But I'm just doing this because, much like you, I love the gear, and for lack of anything else to do. And really, COVID was a turning point for a lot of people. It was for me, because working as a television producer, doing serial commercials and stuff, but we couldn't go into a room with 30 people. So I had just started the channel, the I Don't Have a Band era acoustic panel rock star, because that video went sort of viral, and still to this day the biggest video I've ever done, and it's the bane of my existence, because about 3 years ago I niched down to guitar. So that video is still live, but I had some follow-ups that had a couple 100,000 views that I actually suppressed. But anyways, but in terms of you're talking about the personalities and the attitudes, and I love the community, and that's why I do it. I don't think there's room for the negativity. We see a bit of it, and I know in our groups we harp on it and we talk about it. I know a lot of YouTube friends, but I always say, it adds a little color to the mix, but it's not the majority. So I just some people take it a little bit differently, but there's enough positivity and enough people enjoy this. And for me, it's like I'm just trying to be some dude hanging out with my friends. I just happen to have the camera, and and bringing the content to them. And I've shifted how I do it. I don't know if you've noticed a little slight change in my channel recently. This year. I brought a different aesthetic, but at the same time, it's all about fun, right? It's like I wanted to find a way to kind of let loose a little bit, but I'm a middle-aged guy playing guitar. I didn't want to start headbanging during my performances. I actually wanted to take a step back and make it more about the experience. So without describing it, because it's all done sort of just because I don't even talk about it on the channel, but I've been able to sort of step back a little bit. And then present the tones and the procedures and the processes that I'm talking about, and separate myself from the musical performance, and let people hear and just enjoy the experience, hopefully without saying, who's this guy trying to be a rock star in his mid-50s? You know what I mean?
So I always like to know, what is your favorite guitar that you have?
Well, saying favorite, or as opposed to using a ranking system, is we all call our number one. So if number one is my favorite, there's a couple of guitars that are important. There's the sentimental choice, and there's the one that I call number one. So I actually picked a couple here. So the one that I call number one is this guy.
Wow. Oh, yes.
So the Gibson Howard Roberts Fusion 3. So this I bought brand new in the early to mid 90s. I think 94 I bought this guitar. And I remember being a big Rush fan, as I'm sure that will come up eventually, is Alex was famous for playing a Howard Roberts. It was a early 80s version, a late 70s, early 80s model. So it didn't have like this finger tailpiece on it. But you see him live playing Tom Sawyer. He'd play that, the Les Paul shape with the semi-hollow, it's like if a 335 and a Les Paul had a baby. And I always loved that guitar. And then I saw this model at a guitar show years ago, and I said, I want that. So it sat in my mind for years. And then one particular year, I had started working as a video editor. It was my first reasonably decent paying job. And I had moved out. I had my own little condo and everything. And I was sitting there in the solarium on the internet, and I happened to stroll onto the Gibson website. And that year they were promoting this model, and it was on the homepage. And I looked at it, and at that point, there was only one decision that needed to be made. Red or black.
There you go.
You can see what I chose. So I went to the store, and I'm going to say this, not to extend the story, but Steve's Music, which has been an institution in downtown Toronto for 49 years, just closed its doors. I walked into Steve's. It was hanging up on the ceiling. It was the only one they had. I don't even think I played it. I can still remember in 1994, it was, I think it was $1,600. Was that make sense? $1,600 in 1994. That's not cheap, but they closed their doors just this past week or so after being in business for 49 years.
That's terrible.
So, but so that is number one. We can go down the line. I have a couple I picked here, but
sure. Okay, continue showing. That's one of the things. I actually just, because I usually release new videos on Fridays. Right. So this past Friday, I just released. It's a video of one of my friends' guitar collections, and that's kind of an idea I've had here recently. I've got a few friends who, like me, just hoard. I think I've got like 30-ish at this point. Now my other buddy that I just did the video with, he had 23, and then I've got a couple of friends with like 40, and so I'm going to do some guitar collection videos with all my buddies. But yeah,
I have probably about that much, but they're not all at that caliber, because I've acquired a lot of guitars for the channel, and some of them are are nice guitars that I will continue to use. Like I'll use brands like Balaguer, for example. They sent me an
Yeah.
Espada last year. I put that thing in like 15 videos and I play it all the time. I love it. I have a D'Angelico that I got for a video. Then I have a bunch of these carbon fiber smart guitars, like for M&U Music. I've done a bunch of stuff with them. But the ones that are truly like some Schecters, I should mention some Schecters, a couple of Schecters, but a special one. And, this was certainly not given to me. I would have to sell a million records to get one of these for free. But this was when I turned 50, my gift to myself. This was
Nice.
the
Nice.
Sir
Yeah.
Classic T Deluxe limited edition. I mean, the deluxe look at that top.
That is
This
gorgeous.
this is spectacular. And I've never been a big Telly guy. And when it came to that 50th guitar, not number 50, my age, and
Yeah.
I thought it would be like a Gibson-esque or something. And then another retailer in Toronto that closed this past year, Cosmo Music, we're a Sir dealer and the only one in Toronto, so we don't have a Sir dealer in Toronto now. I walked in and this thing was just I sat down and it was what I call the good room, where they had all the the more expensive brands, and it was just hanging by my face. And I saw this thing, I was like, I actually left it. I went home and then I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Oh,
So
wow.
not being a Telly guy, it doesn't get into service as often because I
Yeah.
tend to lean a little heavier.
It's gorgeous, though. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, and look at the bird's eye maple neck on this thing. It's
Yeah.
insane. Yeah, it's
Well,
beautiful.
in a way that reminds me, so probably my most valuable guitar is one I inherited from my dad, when he passed away in 2020, but it's a 66, I think, Gibson L5.
Oh, wow.
And, it's got the, oh, I'm totally blanking. Is it birch on the top of those? Somebody will crucify me in the comments. I'm totally forgetting what's on the top, but the sides, back, neck is all this crazy flame maple. So it's like when you're looking at the front of it, it looks kind of plain, but as soon as you spin it around, it's like, oh my God, it just, and it's really cool because he actually ordered that guitar himself custom from Gibson.
Oh, wow.
So it's a 66 with the Florentine cut, which is the spiky cut.
Yeah.
Most of those had the rounded Venetian cut, and he also hated gold hardware, so he specially requested that all the hardware be chrome, and it's got Grover tuners, neither of which were standard on an L5 and 66. So it's possible that it may be a one of a kind.
Wow.
Because it's not a production line off the shelf guitar. It is a true custom order. He picked every part on it.
Oh, wonderful. So well, you mentioned 2020. It was the same year I lost my dad. So a little tip of my cap to you and your father. So
I'm sorry to hear that. It was
it's funny.
2020 was a rough year.
Yeah, it was a rough year. We'll leave it there. There was a few other things that happened, but I'm looking right now at a guitar off camera here. My first guitar, which I can't show you because it's hanging on the wall. It was a classical guitar that belonged to my dad. He wasn't a guitar player per se, but he noodled on the harmonica. He had this guitar lying around. I can still remember with his thumb playing the King Creole, from Elvis Presley. And,
Nice.
dun, 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 dun. And then, they wanted to put me in lessons. I wanted to play guitar, so they stuck me in classical guitar lessons, and that was my guitar. I snapped the neck was snapped, the headstock snapped a couple times, or whatever, and it's just not playable anymore. It's in really, really rough shape. But after my father passed, there's a picture of him holding number one with this fake tattoo sleeve that was a commercial I was doing for some cheesy infomercial, and he's holding number one. So I have it printed and it's sitting in the strings, and my desk is right here. So I sit this way. So it's just off to my left side. Whenever I'm working, I see him. So he's here with me
That's awesome.
every day. Yeah.
That's awesome. I so paranoid about things happening to the L5 that it usually stays in the case. It's one of the few that just always stays in the case. Like I try, I've got these here. This is a good sampling of my Gibson. My collection runs Gibson heavy, but I try and swap a few out here and there because I very intentionally, as many guitars as I have, I very intentionally play different guitars. Like, it's like, okay, yesterday I played this one, so today I'm going to grab this one over here, and then okay, now today I'm going to grab this one over here, because A lot of people there, they'll be like, well, why do you have so many guitars? You should have a bunch of guitars sitting in cases. You never even touch them. Trust me, I touch them. But like I said, the L5 is just, in a way, it's like that last little piece of my dad.
Yeah.
So I don't want to risk anything happening to it. So it's,
Yeah.
like I said, it's one of the few that just, and I still play it from time to time, but it lives in the case. So
Well, enjoy it for many years. It's
yeah, that's
full
the
of
plan.
stories. So
And switching topics a little bit, being Canadian, I know that you are a Rush fan. I've heard you talk about Rush many times on your channel. We've already mentioned Alex Lifeson in the podcast here. Would you say that like Alex Lifeson's like your main guitar hero, or is there someone else that got you into it early? Or
oh, without a doubt. I mean, when I discovered Rush, I was at the end of grade 5, and it was the last day of school, and a little less class party, and people were bringing records. I was a bit naive because I had moved from a different neighborhood. We actually were originally from Montreal, and my dad, there was a lot of politics happening in Quebec at that year, in French language, and there's a separatist party and all that. We
yeah,
don't think it's politics, but not being native French speaking from Quebec, it was a lot of businesses were moving to Ontario and Toronto
okay,
specifically. So we had moved. My dad had to move his business, but they didn't buy a house right away. So I was living in one neighborhood, but then finally they bought a house, so I had to move. So I was I was there late in the year, and it was a culture shock because I went from a bunch of guys, all they did was play sports, to suddenly guys with like album band logos on the back of their jean jackets and stuff. And that sounds so innocent now, but as a how old was I? 12 years old or something. I don't
yeah,
remember, but it was so new to me. A guy had an earring, and it was like, oh, he got drunk, and his girlfriend stuck a needle through his earlobe. I mean, it's so silly, but as a young punk with no experience, so all this music was so new to me. And on the
yeah,
last day, I remember seeing Back in Black album and the liner notes, and Malcolm Young with his half closed eyes. He looked all like baked out, and it was like scary for me to see that, right?
yeah.
The Ultimate Rebels. But then someone said, hey, play Red Barchetta. And I was like, who sings that? And he looks at me, he goes, Rush. I go, I'm just kidding, right? Like, I was like, shit, I better figure this out. But that year, it was the year Moving Pictures came out. It was on the radio. My dad, I used to go to work at his office in the summer times, and there was Tom Sawyer, Red Barchetta, Limelight, all day, every day on the radio, and I just fell in love. So Lifeson was just, as I was, noodling a little bit on guitar here and there, and I heard
Yeah,
these sounds. Because before that, I was just holding a tennis racket and dancing to YYZ and stuff like that. And I was like, I want to do that. So he
yeah,
was definitely like the first guitar player that I guess I noticed
yeah,
enough that I wanted to mimic it. So, and it's funny, I never really thought about it that way because I've been asked this question before, but I think if I had listened to other bands. I had a Supertramp record, which was probably my first rock album, Breakfast in
yeah,
America. And I still love that album to this day. But I guess Lifeson was probably the first guitar player that really grabbed me. And as a
yeah.
young guy too, 12 to 13 years old, and by 14, I went to see them live for the first time. And
That's awesome.
they taped the show, which is funny. They just re-released it, the Grace Under Pressure, 1984 in Toronto. I was in that audience, and they
That's
released
cool.
some songs that never been released. So I'm just thinking the whole sequence, like I was all Alex all the time, and yeah, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, like I wanted to play rock guitar because of him.
That's really cool. That's a good
Yeah.
story. Um, you know, funny. I was aware of Rush. Like my so I grew up, I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. When my sister was in high school, she was mostly like Duran Duran and stuff like that. As she got a little older, she started migrating towards, Rush and Styx and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of like my first introduction to guitar music. Cause I was like 10 years old when she was in high school because she's 6 years older than me. But um, it wasn't until my brother, who was 2 years older than me, wasn't until he got in like middle school, and then all of a sudden, like he's coming home with, like a Metallica patch
Yeah.
for the back of his jacket, and so like, "Ooh, Metallica, what is that?" And then I see the video for one, and it's like mind blown.
There was a time where, certain people took Rush for granted.
Yeah,
I mean, legend status happens over time. I mean, Rush
yeah,
was I mean, if you look at all the bands that Rush influenced, they were already entering godlike status around 79, 80, you know, Moving Pictures, Permanent Waves time. I mean, all the modern day progressive metal bands,
Yeah.
all were Rush fans, all of them, you know.
Yeah.
But growing up, being a Rush fan in the 80s, you know, 1984, Grace Under Pressure was already into the synth era of Rush. Because if
Yeah.
you look at their career, it's like, you know, the first 4 albums were, you know, kind of the Led Zeppelin-esque kind of thing. And then they did 2112 and that blew the doors open, right? Then album
Yeah.
5 was Farewell to Kings. They started getting into what they called at the time the art rock, the progressive
Yeah.
rock and hemispheres. But then suddenly Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures hit and Rush skyrocketed at that point, and that was it from there. But by the time the 80s rolled around, you know, Geddy was experimenting with the keyboards and it just became more. And then there was a period in the later 80s, like the Hold Your Fire, Power Windows era, which was highly polished production with lots and lots of keyboards. And there was a lot of Rush fans who had grown up on the older stuff, hated that Rush.
Yeah.
They absolutely hated it. And also Rush was very serious back then too. They, you know, into the 80s, I think they started around the time I started seeing them live, they started to loosen up a little bit, but they
Yeah.
were notoriously private people. And you know, they weren't like, you know, I'm not saying they were, I mean, I didn't see them live personally in the 70s. I see photos. Alex was a goofball, looks like his whole career, but they weren't as open to making fun of themselves as they became by the time you saw them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's that transition from the, you know, the classic rock era of early of Rush, the guitar driven stuff, until suddenly in the synthy era, Police influenced kind of reggae, ska kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And lots more keyboards. And a lot of the old fans didn't like it and they stepped off. And it wasn't until the 90s where obviously the 90s era of rock kicked in, which is the last great decade of rock and roll, as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
influenced Rush back into a 3-piece, no keyboards kind of thing. And they went really heavy again, which was awesome. I actually loved it, but I loved all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now that we're seeing Rush on stage just a couple of days ago with the Annika Niles and coming out of retirement for a tribute tour, which I do have tickets for, I'm a
Yeah.
bit torn because a friend of me asked me, he says, "Oh, I saw it on TV. I saw the clip." He says, "Is that kind of like what they sound like?" And I'm like, "Actually, not really." You know, and I'm not saying this because I don't think they sounded good. I'm like, I shed a tear when they said they were coming back, and I don't think it's Rush without Neil Peart.
Yeah.
But you know, we just talked about our fathers. You know, my dad was 76 when he passed. There's Geddy 72 rocking out on stage, and I say, all the power to him. He's alive and he's healthy. And Alex, and both of them, they should enjoy their catalog and bring it. Is it Rush as I knew it? No, it's 4 people now. It's not 3. It's not the great
Yeah.
power trio. You know, Geddy's going for it vocally. I'm not going to say one way or the other, he's not 21, but my goodness, he's certainly given it the college try, and bless his heart for doing it, and they can still play. But it's the vibe of Rush years ago when when Neil Peart went to do a drum solo, the whole audience just stared and watched him,
Yeah.
and you could feel it in the room. The professor stepped up to the kit, you know, and it was just this. Oh, it's hard to, especially being from Toronto too. That whole vibe of welcome home,
Yeah. Yeah.
and go nuts and walking down the street and hearing smelling pot everywhere and all the rush. I
Yeah.
mean, that was such a rush, you know,
Yeah.
to
I mean,
live through.
I know how you feel. I don't know a ton about Annika. I'd never heard of her before she was announced as the new drummer. From what I've seen on YouTube, she's got some chops. She's good. But it's similar to last year. I don't know why it took me until I was 48, 49 years old, but last year was my first time ever actually seeing Metallica live.
Oh, well, you're one
I
ahead of
don't
me.
know why. They've always been one of my favorite bands. I don't know why I've never seen them. I have no excuse. I just didn't. But of course, it was Pantera opening. But it's like, I mean, I'm so happy to see them playing the music live and doing, but like, is it Pantera? No. But is it as good a tribute to Pantera as we're ever likely to get? Yes. And so I kind of look at it the same as your thing with Rush. You know, it's like it you know, with Daryl and Vinny gone, it's not Pantera, but
That's the thing, though, right? You know, I mean, you know, Geddy and Alex are still there. I mean, it's not. I call it 2/3 of Rush. That's what I'm calling it.
Yeah.
But yeah, without the brothers there, I mean, it's a great tribute. Listen, Zach Wilde, love him to bits. But you have basically two original members, and neither of them are the founding members
Yeah.
or the brothers. I mean, the band could have continued on. I mean, I know the singer is, it's very signature, and it would have been hard to replace him. But I don't know. I never saw Pantera. It's funny. I slept on 90s music during the 90s. Like that was like, I was in my 20s. I should have been deep into that stuff. And I was
Yeah.
such a progressive rock guy. I was Rush and Yes and stuff like that. And then I look back now at, like, my God, like all that music, like Tool and Rage Against the Machine. And like, oh my God, I'm like, those bands were out of sight. And I missed all of that. I
Yeah.
saw a lot of great bands live. Don't get me wrong. Van
Yeah.
Halen and Rush and Yes and like all kinds of cool jazz bands, and I saw a lot of great music. But I slept on the '90s bands. So Pantera is like, no, like I love listening to Pantera now. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it to pieces, and I'm like,
Well,
God, no.
since you mentioned Tool, Adam Jones is one of my top guitar guys. I mean, he's not like a big shredder or anything like that, but everything he does is just so tasteful, and it's just so perfect for what they're doing. Um, and I feel very fortunate in that I've seen them probably about 10 times live now.
I've never seen Tool. I've never seen them
Oh,
live.
they're so good. The first funny quick story. The first time I ever saw them, I was maybe 20-ish, 20, 21, somewhere around there. And I had dated this girl from like 18 to 19, for like a year and a half. And the whole time that we dated, every time I would play Tool and Rage Against the Machine, she was like, she hated them. Okay, whatever. We broke up. Like 6 months later, Rage Against the Machine is coming to Houston. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go. And then she calls me out of the blue. I just got my Rage Against the Machine tickets. Are you kidding? I'm not going. And just because I didn't want to risk seeing her because it was not a good breakup.
Yeah.
And then like 3 months later, Tool was coming to Houston. And sure enough, out of the blue, I just got my Tool tickets. Like, I'm going. I'm not missing Tool. Like, you are not going to ruin this for me. So I did. I got my Tool tickets. Is it the International Ballroom in Houston, which was like a converted Safeway grocery store or something. Right. So it was like a super low ceiling, but I got like 15 feet in front of Adam Jones and just stayed there and stared at his hands for the entire show and was just mesmerized. The crazy thing, and that was the Anima tour, because I didn't start getting into them until like the last part of the Undertow cycle.
Yeah.
But the funniest part about that show though is when they all come out, like the lights are really low at first, and they're playing Stinkfist, like the intro, and it wasn't until like it really kicks in with that first pre-chorus part, and then that's when the lights come up, and it's like, oh, Maynard is blue. From head to toe, he's painted blue. Okay. It's like, but you couldn't see that at first because the lights were so low. So it was just, funny little anecdote about that show. But yeah, Adam Jones is like, it's because of him that I love Silverburst guitars. It's because of him that I started playing drop D. It's impossible for me to understate how big of an influence Adam Jones has been on me and my playing. I would say, like, if I had to pick a favorite player, I would pick Steve Vai, but Steve Vai has not influenced me in nearly the way that Adam Jones has. So,
well, it's funny because, obviously being a Rush fan, and I'm very influenced by Alex and Rush's sound and, bands I was in. I did an album in the 90s. It had a very Rush-esque flavor. But the music that I do now and the music that I create for my channel, I've actually gone more dropped. I mean, I did drop D for years just because I liked it, but I've gone down to drop C sharp. That's as low as I go. But I write a lot of riffs based rock dropped tuned.
Yeah.
And, so it would be more reminiscent of Adam Jones, because I like progressive rock. So it ends up coming off, different time signatures, drop tuning. Who are we talking about here? We're talking about Adam Jones, right? So
Yeah,
it's
for
funny.
sure.
And then another band, which not only me, but a lot of people slept on, which is probably the biggest travesty in the history of rock music. You have any idea who I might be talking about? A band that influenced a lot of the bands that we listened to that didn't
Like,
even reach close to the success that all
what
the bands
era are
that
we
followed.
talking?
We're talking, well, they've actually been around. They predated the 90s, but they
Okay.
influenced all of the grunge and the heavy bands of the 90s. All of them claimed this band to be an influence, but they never reached the pinnacle of success that these other bands did.
I don't know.
King's X.
Oh, yeah, yeah. A Texas band, King's
I
X
was,
is.
I was going
I've
to say,
seen Doug Pinnick more times than I can count in downtown Austin. He actually was. I'm totally blanking on their name. There was like a metal band here in Austin, and he was the singer of. And we
right.
played 2 or 3 shows with them in downtown Austin. Um, and they had this. The nicest way I can think to say it is they had this gigantic guy who played guitar. He played like a Dean ML, just like Dimebag Darrell,
Yeah.
and shredded just like Dimebag Darrell, but he was gigantic.
I've had people in the comments say, "Oh, you remind me of Ty Tabor," and I'm like, interesting, because I mean, who didn't hear Dogman back in the day? And I remember I had a friend of mine who had a King's X cassette, and I remember maybe listening to it a little bit, but it didn't stick with me. And just last year, I just started listening a little bit more, and then there was a 5-pack of their first 5 CDs.
Yeah,
Yes, I still buy CDs. I bought off of Amazon, and I'm listening to it, and I'm going to shit you not that I almost started like shedding a tear a little bit, and I was like, this is my sound.
yeah,
Like, this is, like, because Ty Tabor is a wonderful guitar player, but his licks are attainable.
yes,
Steve Vai, as you said, who doesn't love Steve Vai? I've seen Steve Vai live. I'll never play like Steve Vai.
yeah,
He'll definitely push me to be incrementally better, but I mean, his work ethic is legendary. I mean, I just won't be practicing 12 hours a day for the rest of my life. So, but Ty Tabor had such an aggressive, yet funky, yet in the pocket, yet melodic. Plus, he could sing.
yeah,
I can't sing, but I'm listening to it. And I go, man, I feel terrible. I am the reason why King's X didn't become bigger. The guys like me who loved their music, who just slept on it when it mattered. And I felt so bad in that moment because I was like, I not only did I buy the 5-pack, but I was traveling and I wanted to have the Dogman album with me. And I decided not to rip the CD, even though I paid for it. I bought
yeah,
it again on iTunes, Apple Music. So I paid for it again to have it on my but it's a sad story because I actually heard the rest of the story that why King's X was never as successful as they should have been, because they were great songwriters, great songs, very influential band. But what this much I did know is that they never said they were a Christian rock band, but there was a certain segment of their audience that was into Christian music.
yeah,
And they had very hopeful lyrics. It was like they were heavy, but their lyrics were very positive and hopeful. So a Christian rock community embraced them. Now, they
yeah,
didn't say no. Sure,
yeah,
we're happy you like our music, but then that the Christian institution, the business side of it, King's X had a big following in that world, so they were putting their records into the record stores. And what
yeah,
I didn't know is that one day Doug Pinnick, who is gay,
yeah,
decided to come out, not in a big way. It was just he was doing an interview and he just off the cuff happened to mention it.
yeah,
Well, word of that got into that Christian industry, and they pulled King's X's music out of their stores, and it was a significant percentage of their sales. And the record companies who didn't care, they're just bottom line. They saw
yeah,
numbers dipping. They said, let's cut them off. This band's not making any money.
yeah. That's
And
unfortunate.
but what I love most, I hate that story, but what I love most that came out of that story is the other 2 members in the band stood behind him and said,
Yeah,
you're our brother, and we'll do what we do. And they stuck together all these years, and that's amazing. So it kind of sucks that like, what does that have to do with anything? You know, it's music, man. Like, I do what you do. I don't care. You know,
Yeah, it's like, same thing with say, Rob Halford. Like, Rob Halford came out, it's like, who cares? He's still a freaking legend, you know? And when we found out we found out Doug came out of the club, none of us cared because King's X was freaking awesome. Um, I actually even remember, and obviously this is kind of on the downslope of their career. They actually played because I grew up in Southeast. I live in Austin now, but grew up in Southeast Texas. Um, and Beaumont was like the big town that we all played in. And King's X did play the same club we played at regularly in Beaumont. And as a matter of fact, my buddies in the band Room 21 opened for him. And so,
wow.
oh, let's go see Room 21 playing with King's X. And it was a great night, great show. Both bands were fantastic. And nobody really knows who Room 21 is because they were a Southeast Texas band. People need to find this band because of when I was in the band scene in the 90s, we were all kind of borrowing from our heroes. I was the music I wrote for my band Ugly Tribe. I was talking about how Adam Jones is such a like you could tell I was a Tool fan if you listened to Ugly Tribe music. Half Adam Jones, half Tom Morello. I was kind of throwing in all that stuff. Room 21 was the only band from that area in that time. Like they 100% had their own thing. Like they had a sound nobody had. I still to this day can't think of a single national act that had the sound that they had. Like if they could have gotten noticed, like they would have been huge. And it's not just the fact that they had their own sound. They were amazingly tight. Like the tightest, real heavy, but not like not like Sepultura kind of. I mean, just like if you took Tool and dialed up the BPM about 40-50% and then just made it just heavy, that's kind of how their sound was. And like I said, I just wish more people knew about them because they were amazing. And their guitar player, they had two guitar players, Tommy and Anton. Anton was like the noise guy. He was adding all the color and the flavor, but Tommy, that dude could go head to head with James Hetfield on down picking. I've never seen anybody down pick faster than Tommy Rogers. And like I said, that's again, that's Tommy was a huge influence on me, even though nobody knows who he is. I used to go to every single Room 21 show and just stare at his hands and just be amazed. And like I said, I just wish more people knew who they were because they were amazing.
Unfortunately, in the industry is littered with bands like that. It just, I mean, if you listen to like, a hugely successful band like Alice in Chains, for example, listen to early Alice in Chains, you can hear King's X in their music. Clearly.
Yeah,
Clearly,
for sure.
Absolutely.
And
no, Alice in Chains is a great band. Unfortunately, we don't have to get the history of every band we talk about, but unfortunately, the industry is littered with unsuccessful stories, right? Bands that maybe had it, but there was just something there. Maybe it was a business decision, a choice, or so. So I'm with you. I like to share positive experiences. I like to teach things. I like to, I've been told my tones are getting better and better. Like I got a compliment from someone who's in the industry and he goes, your tones are killer, man. I really like what you're doing. I was like, wow, I've been trying for years to get someone to say that.
awesome.
I really come a long way.
Compliment,
Yeah. And I've added, listen, we should be talking about gear. I know we've been talking for a while, but I mean, I've added, little by little, my gear is growing. Fortunately, I get some gear from sent to me for videos like this.
Yeah.
I have to mention this guy. Come on. Like, and I should mention, because this is the Tube Workshop Lulis,
Yeah.
Uwe Lulis signature.
Yeah.
He was, Gravedigger, Accept. He's actually just launching his new project, the Uwe Lulis project. So, anyways, this is his like OD1 into a JCM 800. So you've got a built-in OD1 circuit.
Nice.
You have a JCM and a JTM mode, so you can switch that, which is it's still a single channel amplifier.
Yeah.
with the pedigree of a multi-channel amplifier, it says you can't switch between those modes, but in the studio, you're going to get like a whole, anyways, like having amps like this, that was made for me.
Yeah.
Like, what an honor. But I've improved my microphones. I was recording direct for a while, and then I got back. I do have some Marshall 4x10 cabs, but Angle hooked me up with a 412 double XL.
Nice.
I record everything through that now. I was using load boxes for a while. Actually a good one, Red 7 here.
Yeah.
The Amp Central Evo, the newer one. My Sur Reactive Load, which is a simple but killer box, and the React IR2 is also here. But I'm 99% cabs. So I said, if I'm recording with microphones, I need a preamp.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going all in. I want this to sound really good. So I sold off, my DAW controllers was the other big popular topic on my channel, which I will still cover occasionally. But I sold off some of my original DAW controllers, and I bought the Warm Audio WA273EQ. So a Neve style dual channel preamp with EQ.
Yeah. I have
just a 3-band EQ.
I have the single channel without the EQ. Yeah.
So, but what a great piece of kit. So I recorded with 2 mics. I'd like to do more, but, just give it a little nip and tuck, because now that the mics are in the other room, the mics are set. I never touch it.
Yeah.
I got a 906 riding the dust cap in the center, and then I have a 421 compact a little further up to get the kind of the warmth and a little more bottom end. I'd love to mic up the cab, get some resonances, and maybe do 4 or 5 mics. I'll need another preamp, but for now, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. But coming in through that preamp, and then technically multi-tracking 2 mic setups, so you end up with 4 mics. Sounds huge. It sounds great, but then the way I package them together, I've gotten better and better at that. So someone notable in the industry said, "Dude, your tones are sounding really, really good." I was like, I've been trying so long for someone to say that.
That's awesome. Now your studio, are you in a basement?
Yes.
Okay.
So we moved to this house just under 5 years ago.
Okay.
You will remember me with the red walled studio.
Yeah.
So that was my old house. That was also in a basement. And then this was actually an in-law suite. And where I'm sitting right now, there's actually videos about this. This was a kitchen. And I actually destroyed a kitchen that had stainless steel appliances, cabinets, and everything. When we bought the house, we were looking in the area, and the house we thought we were going to get just wasn't working out. And I actually ignored this house because there was a kitchen in the area where I wanted my studio.
Yeah.
So then the other house fell through, and I was like, I was talking to my wife. I said, let's go see that house. And I was like, this is a great house. The only problem is that kitchen. That's where I need to put the studio.
Yeah.
So I said, would you mind if I destroyed the kitchen to build my studio? And my wife says, well, you do all the cooking. What do I care? So I literally, you can look it up on my channel. I destroyed a beautiful kitchen.
Yeah.
And turned it into my studio. So but it's in the basement, but fully finished basement. So
unfortunately for me, I'm the opposite. In my house, this is like the second floor, like a media room.
Yeah.
And we got neighbors close proximity all the way around. So I can't mic up cabinets just because this is an upscale neighborhood. If I crank Marshall cabinets, I'm going to have the cops knocking on my door in 5 minutes. So
there's a way you can do it.
Well, I mean, I could build like an ISO cabinet or something like that. But it's so much easier to just use IR, the load boxes and IR.
Oh, sure, it's easier. But I was using load boxes for a number of years, and then when Engel sent me the cabinet, and I started revisiting, and at the time it was here in the room with me.
Yeah.
And recording cabs in the studio is a dumb thing to do because you need to isolate it if you really want to hear what you're doing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because you want to hear them through your monitors. So once I had this other room in the basement that's kind of storage, I was like, why don't I just, I got some long cables that were provided by another sponsor.
Yeah.
And man, in fact, just today, because I'm working on a video right now, I'm going to be exploring proxy on the Helix Stadium. Yeah. So I captured a tone with the load box, and then I did another one with the cab with the exact same settings on the amp. And there's just something about doing it for real.
Yeah.
And my good friend John Simon, Sonic Drive Studio, I give him a shout. His living situation was he has a nice stacked house, and his studio is in the attic.
Yeah.
But much like you, it's a nice neighborhood, and there's neighbors in close proximity. So he's got the same 4x12 double XL, and he's recorded with it during the day when he was maybe certain no one was around.
Yeah.
But he ended up doing the Grossman Fat Box. and he's got 3 mic. It's basically an enclosed unit with a shelf for a 12-inch speaker.
Okay. Yeah.
And he went speaker crazy, so he's got a whole inventory. He does big with everything. He can't go small.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he has a whole inventory speaker, so he can basically pop the speakers in and out. And there's a
That's pretty
harness
cool.
there to mount. And it's so quiet. He'll run 120 watt amp into that thing, and it'll jack the snot out of it, and you can still talk over it.
I might have to look into that then, because if I could get something that quiet, then that could certainly be doable.
Because the speaker sits facing upwards.
Yeah.
And then you drop it in. I probably put butterfly nuts or whatever to lock them in there. And then the top of the cabinet goes over it, then it snaps shut. So it pulls everything down, and then the box is like, we could probably make, like, I was thinking of even making one, because like getting a 1x12 and then mounting it this way,
Yeah.
and then just building another box on top and just making it like 4 inches, 6 inches thick of good absorption material and a good solid airtight box, and just would probably muffle it a lot. And then whatever, like with mine, I mean, I'll jack this thing up, but it's sitting in the room, and I've tested around the house. My wife's office is 2 floors above.
Yeah.
And she could just hear it through the vents, but she says, no, it's not a problem. Just baffle the hell out of it. Like,
if
gotta go real, man.
I say, if only basements were a thing in Texas.
I thought about this. If I had to move, I would figure out how to baffle. Like, now that I've gone cab, I don't think I can go back.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it too much.
So like my setup though, when I do it, and I don't have like a fancy KHE switch or anything like that. I wish I did, but I don't.
I don't either.
So I have to, manually unplug stuff and plug it back in. But I've got my rack here. So I've got a J48 direct box that I plug directly into, one line going in for, just a DI signal clean in case I use it. Actually, it's something I picked up from Glenn Fricker, using the DI signal as a noise gate activation. So it makes super clean guitar tracks. But also if I need to reamp later or something like that. So I go into the J48, got the line going out, and then kind of run around the side of the room and going into the input of the amps, and then the line for the DI. And then I've just got a speaker cable coming back the same direction, going in. Like right now, I just use a 16 ohm torpedo captor, not the Captor X, but just the plain captor. And then that runs into my interface, and I just run. In order to try and keep things as consistent as possible, I always use the exact same IR. It's just the 2 notes Marshall 412 IR, because I don't. Yes, I can experiment with all these different cabinets, but again, I'm trying to like make it consistent, not.
That's smart.
I don't want people to be like, well, you process the hell out of that. And, I want it to be simple. I'll occasionally, like if I'm doing like a lead part, I'll occasionally throw a little bit of delay or reverb. And I actually, I'll be honest, one thing I kind of stole from you is, for a while, and again, it's all a learning process. We figure it all out as we go. But for a while, I would do like a full mix, and then I would do another version of the same thing, like just isolated guitars. But what I do now, and again, I kind of got this from you, is I do one demo. I do 3 to 4 different demos, but they're different songs, different styles, different amps. But I'll, for each demo, be like a few bars of a full mix, and then a few bars of the isolated guitar. So I kind of cut in and out of the mix now. And again, I'm trying. You talk about the attention retention stuff. I used to, like when I first started, I would tell like the whole story, and then I would have the audio demos like at the end. Well, now I try and just do like 3 or 4 paragraphs and then an audio demo. Like I try and get to it really quick, and then another couple of paragraphs, and then another. So I try and divide it up and
it's funny. Listen, funny you notice that, because I made a conscious effort to do that, because I used to do multiple songs and things too, and the audience can only absorb so much. There's maybe 5 to 7-8% of people that were like, yeah, and they want to watch everything, and to like I produce the music. Sounds like you do also.
Yeah.
So so that's part of the production time.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be smart with it where now if I get a riff or something and I'm a little bit, I mean, we're always saving little bits and bobs, but I try to write music when I can and have something on the go, ready to go to drop into a video, as opposed to, okay, today's Monday and I want a video by Thursday. So I need to write music and then I'm going to do the demo. And then it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is.
So, and if it's a big video or something that I'm really like, I had an amp sent to me from New Jersey, Evo amps by TM50, beautiful hand-wired amp. I wrote 3 separate pieces of music at 3 different styles, and it was like an epic video. The video did reasonably well, not as well as it didn't do as well as I had hoped it would based on the work I put into it.
Yeah.
But I've learned that, I get into this thing where I'm actually crafting a piece of music where it's like, oh, those 2 parts don't stitch well, so I need a stitch part or something. Or I start like, oh, and I'm sitting there, and next thing you know, for 2 hours later, I'm just jamming to a drum machine or something to come up with some part. And then I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? So now I've been backing off, and that's what you probably noticed is that, I'll come up with a riff and I'll just do the riff. And then if I have another riff that I was writing that might be part of a song, but it wasn't quite working, I don't have to worry about it anymore. I said, well, they sound good on their own.
Yeah.
And I did one. I can just remember the skeleton that was playing in that video, but it was an orange background. I'm trying. What was that video about? I can't remember. Oh, my dumbest rig ever.
Yeah.
So I had 3 different riffs. One was kind of a broken chord thing. One was kind of a chuggy thing. And one was like a riff rocky kind of thing. And they were all sort of crafted to be part of one composition. And I was like, I needed a few more hours or a day just to think about it and come up with little stitch parts and a solo and stuff. I'm like, stop.
Yeah.
The audience doesn't need that. They don't care. I don't have to write a song here. I just I'm showcasing the tones, and I need something to do that. I need a vehicle to show the tones. So stop. So I'm forcing myself. If something comes, and like my last video, I wrote something that I really liked. I did a Boss device little shootout with the ME90 and the GX10, and a piece of music came out. I was like, okay, go. I'm just gonna do it, right?
Yeah.
So I did it. So if it comes out, I'll do it, but I don't force myself anymore. People want to hear the isolated tones. I don't know. I kind of understand why, but part of me doesn't understand why. We don't listen to music like that, but they want to hear what it sounds like. And then this way it's easier to like, okay, here's a chuggy riff. Okay, let's check it out in isolation. Well, I do double track. So let's strip it right down to the single guitar. Here we go. And then move on. I don't know if I'm explaining too much, but I find it's easier to make. Yeah. And more people are actually watching it. Yeah. Because they don't want to process too much at once. And let's face it, not everyone likes the music I make, so I don't want to force them to listen to something. Because I can't force them. They bounce, they don't stay. Yeah. Well, let's just tolerate this music and then see what he has to say. No, they bounce, they leave.
Well, I would argue that I think the reason a lot of people want to hear the isolated tracks is because a lot of these people are going to be playing it in their bedroom by themselves. So, hearing it in a full mix is great, but they might not ever get a chance to hear it that way. So, and that's kind of why I throw the isolated stuff in. I was along those same lines of what you're talking about. Like the audience doesn't care. They don't want to, like when I first started, I would do like almost complete songs, like these long pieces and it's just because I was in bands for so long and I was almost always one of, if not the only primary songwriter in those bands. Like I'm used to writing songs. But I also try and take feedback. So, a buddy of mine was like, man, the audio demos you do, like the music's great, but I almost kind of feel like it's just a little bit too long. I was like, okay. And then I took that, processed it, and I started again, like watching what are other people doing. Oh, well, a lot of people, they're doing like a minute, maybe a minute and a half, and that's it, some of them even less than that. So now that's why I cut everything back. I'll do 2 riffs or maybe 3, like, one thing that goes into another kind of thing. But I try and keep everything short and brief, and, this is what it is. And you get a little dose, but I'm not going to sit there and make you sit through an entire, 4-minute song. Cause, I realized when he said that, I realized like, well, I probably wouldn't enjoy that either if I was watching the video. So, and again, it's all like, as much as I love just sitting down and playing guitar and just going on for hours, nobody wants to watch me do that. So,
it's funny because there's very few people that, or very few videos that I actually watch the whole thing, other than I have some YouTubers in my circles where we share videos with each other before launch and we watch the whole thing. And I realize, when I can, I'll watch those videos. But if you start to look at your own viewing habits, and you'll realize that shit, you're probably not watching the whole thing. The expectations, I'm like, why would people watch all of my videos if I'm not watching theirs? And it's I realize I shouldn't have that expectation that you need to see this, right?
yeah,
Some people will. There's those, if people get it and there's something, they're taking something from it, they will. But if we look at our own habits and realize, yeah, we're not watching top to tail with every video that we click on, right? So we have to understand that's just how it is. We need to move on. We get the piece that we need and we're going to bounce. We're going to move on. So we can try holding there as long as we can,
yeah,
just enough to you to say, all right, you met that minimum expectation. We'll show it to a few more people
yeah.
and then move on to the next.
What I have to, and we've been going for a while now. We can wrap it up here in just a second. But what I have to remember, as opposed to looking at my own viewing habit, I have to remember that my viewing habits are not the average viewing habits. I'm a weird, like, I'm a completion guy. When I watch a YouTube video, most videos, unless they're just incredibly boring, I'm going to watch them all the way through. Same thing, like my wife, I drive her crazy because like she will listen to in the car, like listening to music. She'll listen to this song, that song, maybe like a whole album. I will put on Metallica and listen to the whole collection. Then I'll put on Tool and I will listen to every album in order. And then I'll put on Megadeth or who Soundgarden, Rage Against the Machine. Like I'm a little OCD in that area. Like when I sit down to like do something, like I don't do anything halfway. I just like I can't. It's not in me. But so as a counterpoint, I guess, to what you're saying, it is important to remember to keep in mind normal viewing habits, but I have to keep in mind that my viewing habits aren't normal viewing habits. So, and
No, you're clearly the exception to the rule, but the
yes,
average, we're bombarded with stuff and to expect, listen, I want people to hang out. I mean, I make full videos because I hope someone's watching them, right?
yeah,
Otherwise I should just make 3-minute videos and probably be a lot easier. I just haven't figured out how to tell a story in 3 minutes. Maybe that's my problem, but as long as we understand that, but I think understanding that actually will help. When I say you, me too, I'm using it to try and help me move forward
yeah,
and simplify things. That's advice that I've gotten from so many creators. It's good versus good enough.
yeah, yeah,
And piling on just because, well, this video needs to be an hour. I mean, this video is gonna be long, but generally, if we're doing a review, I mean, if you can tell it, there's a good YouTuber that I enjoy watching, and I've noticed his videos hover around 8 minutes.
yeah,
That's half of what I generally do. And I'm like, man, if I got to start making 8-minute videos, because at 8 minutes, you don't have pre-roll ads or those mid-roll ads. People
yeah,
are not getting as bombarded with this. Okay, you don't make as much money, but maybe I'm growing faster.
yeah,
So I'm trying. I just like, how do I make a video so short? But then I think it's life or death to start learning how, because, nobody's like, maybe 8 to 10% of people are watching the full videos. That's not enough, as long as I get them through the crux. So anyways,
yeah,
viewer habits, it's something to try and understand because
yeah,
it does help tailor. Don't change your whole methodology just because of some perceptions there.
yeah.
But it's good to be aware.
Yeah.
It's definitely good to be aware and figure out how do you get that message across. At least that's what I've been trying to do over the last couple of years.
I guess I'm in a good spot then because my videos tend to be 7.5 to about 9.5 minutes. I try and
Perfect.
get in, get out. My occasionally like pedal demo videos, I might go a little bit longer because I'll do like a whole section where I'm tweaking knobs and stuff. But otherwise, like generally for like guitars, it's 7.5 to 9.5. That's my sweet spot.
Perfect. So. Then you need to teach me how.
I'm happy to give some pointers. So. All right, Dan, I appreciate it so much. You've been super generous with your time. I've had a great time chatting with you.
Likewise.
I would love to do it again sometime if you're game. Okay, next week. No.
Hey, listen, if you get into themes or you want to get very specific about something and you want to bring me back and
Well,
whatever.
I kind
As you
of
see,
look.
I like talking. So
So I kind of look at this episode as just like a get to know you. I mean, we've chatted a couple of times on Facebook, but we've never spoken before now. So, but again, I really appreciate it. And, a whole lot more people know who you are than know who I am. But if you would like to take a minute to kind of shout out your social media stuff and let people know where to find you, now would be a great time.
Well, I primarily am on YouTube at Lonely Rocker. So, but you can find me Lonely Rocker on Instagram. I have the Lonely Rockers Club on Facebook, which is a very small group of people, but have sometimes some good conversations in there. But
I
most
am
of
a
the time,
member.
you of course, and that's where we've connected. So, but most people follow me on YouTube because that's where I spend most of my time. So, always happy to. I'd be curious if anyone is still here at this point in this video. Who the hell wants to watch me for an hour and a half? But I got to put the code word cheese sandwich. If you heard me say cheese sandwich, put it in the comments. I bet you there's no cheese sandwiches down there.
Probably not. What I'll probably do is I'll probably trim out some of the excess talking about the ins and outs of YouTube channels. But I'll try and keep it a little lean. But again, I had a really good time talking to you, and like I said, I just really appreciate you being so generous with your time. So,
No, it was my pleasure, and keep doing what you're doing.
thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Cheers.